I don't own a Pitt shirt. I don't own a Nebraska shirt. I wore the Louisville shirt last week, and thank you, Katie Schumacher-Cauley, for this one, which I think I wore somewhere back in the time. And I had this one and the Creighton one both out in case, I had to choose. We've joked with each other about, what a incredibly intense last few days this has been. So what do you think of the Final Four?
Oh my God. I mean, it's crazy that it's all chalk for the first time since 2008, which I think with how the season started and what we saw throughout and even early on in the tournament, I don't think anyone would have anticipated that we would see all chalk just because of, I feel like the parity we've seen, some of those early round upsets. But from the Sweet 16 on, there were absolutely no upsets, which seems crazy to think about considering there were so many good teams, and the two seeds, even three seeds that I think could have made a Final Four. So honestly, I'm pretty shocked that it was all chalk. But based on how the teams were playing, it looks like the four best teams right now.
I agree with that, but there were some moments where things could have been
Yeah.
just so much different. Like, didn't you think for sure Stanford with the lead
Yeah.
was going to go up 2-1 against Louisville? And in that case, and no disrespect to Louisville, it felt more like Stanford lost that set. However, like last night, when Creighton had the lead in the third set, Creighton didn't lose that. Penn State just reached out, grabbed it by the throat, and pulled it back in.
Yeah.
But there were
I,
so many little turning points that could have changed just a multitude of things. I do feel better about a couple things that you guys gave me crap for. One was always putting Dayton in my top 16 and voting Creighton number 3 over Penn State because I'm convinced had that match been at Creighton, it might have turned out differently. Just as I still remain convinced that Louisville at Stanford would have been a little bit different than Stanford at Louisville, but we'll
yeah.
never know. And there's 4 good teams, and not to take anything away from any
Yeah.
of
Yeah. And I want to go back to your Dayton point too. I think for teams like Creighton and teams like Dayton that people haven't watched all year for the most part, some people, obviously, the volleyball super fans have, but they're not regularly on TV. So you rarely ever see those teams. And I thought it was really cool for the country to see a team like Creighton make it that far and say, oh, there are mid majors that are like really freaking good at volleyball. Dayton as well. Like that was only, I think, the second or third time that I'd watched them all season. And like Lexi Almodovar, I mean, I know we've been talking about her all year and I watch her on tape, but I think watching her in a match was so cool. Like the way that she was just able to go off and, she's 5'8". Like I was just so impressed, but I thought it was really cool that, the country could see Creighton and Dayton, that they're schools that aren't just the Nebraska, Penn State, Stanfords of the world that are good at volleyball.
um, I was amused when you did because that's the first time you'd actually really paid attention to
Yeah.
Lexi. I think it said Almodovar, but we say it all different. Anyway, Lexi, but she's just fabulous, and
Yeah.
she's like there's a handful of shorter outside hitters who are just so much fun to watch. Chloe
Yeah.
Chicoine and she remind me so much of each
Yeah.
other.
Charity Looper, same thing.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Charity Looper can flat out sky, and I had said all
It's
season
crazy.
that I thought living and dying by the pins was going to cost them. I mean, it still could. There's 2 more games to go, but give those 2 outside hitters credit, Anna DeBeer and Charity Looper, and then the X factors for them. I mean, coming through in so many big ways. The one thing about all 4 teams is that they all have really good players. They
Yeah.
all play really tough defense, and they're all really well coached. That's the one thing about that impresses me more than anything about Pitt is when you look at them and think, I mean, pound for pound, you just look at them and go, they're just studly.
Yeah.
They're just bigger and stronger and more well-rounded than everybody else. But they play hellacious defense, you know?
That's, and not to look ahead too much, but let's say we get a Nebraska Pitt matchup in the finals, which I mean, I had them in my finals in my bracket. And I think that those are the two best teams right now. I have thought Pitt looked like the best team all year, and I still do think they're the best team. But the way Nebraska's playing right now worries me for Pitt that they're not going to be able to outlast them defensively. And if you're playing Nebraska, the number one key is you have to find a way out of those long rallies, and you have to be able to put a ball down when they make it tough, throughout an entire match. And Nebraska trains that in their gym every day. The defense is insane. I think we saw that really play out in the Wisconsin match. But Pitt's going to have to put balls down either really quickly in transition, or their defense is going to have to really step up, because right now Nebraska's defense is the best in the country, hands down.
Well, for that matter, Pitt's going to have to do the same thing against Louisville, which is,
Yeah.
as the West Coasters often say in beach volleyball, they're gnarly. I mean, Louisville,
Yeah.
Louisville. I mean, they're like cockroaches. You can't kill them. They just keep coming back and back and back.
Yeah, and I want to walk through like all of the Elite Eight matches, because I feel like there's so much to say about all of them. But I mean, good place to start is that one. Obviously, I was on call for the Louisville Stanford match, and I know you mentioned it felt like that third set. I mean, it felt like to us that whoever was going to win that third set was going to win. And the fact that Louisville ran out of subs late, they have PK serving in the backcourt, and then they have normally in a 6-2, so they normally always have their setter in the back and a right side up front. They end up having Sophie Maldonado Diaz in the backcourt and Cabello up front. And so naturally, Stanford's hammering balls outside to Ruben, and Ruben's just spraying them all over. And then we get roll shots in the net, and it's like, this is your Stanford's opportunity to take control of that. And I thought Louisville handled that situation really well. I thought Maldonado Diaz, to me, was the MVP of that match. I mean, she was outstanding. 12
How
kills
about
at
the
nearly
stat that I
400.
looked up and sent you during the match? I don't know if
Yeah.
you ever got to use it, but so Sofia Maldonado Diaz played at Arizona last year in 2 matches against Stanford. She had a combined 14 kills and 12 errors.
Yeah.
And look at what she did the other day. I mean, that was just, and she's been really solid for them
Yeah.
all season. She was a nice addition from the get-go.
Yeah, I mean, she's been solid, but I think it's been really cool to see in especially these really big matches, like which players really come alive. And, she's been good for them, but I wouldn't say she's like their most elite player. We talk about Charity Looper and Andrew Beer, like those are their two best players, hands down. I'd throw Atlanta Scott in there as well. But they're very left side dominant. And so to have that right side production, that was one of the keys that Dan Maskey told us headed into the match. Like, we have to get our right sides going. So it's really fun to see her step up in that moment. But honestly, overall, I think for Louisville, it was such a team effort. Like, everyone stepped up. You had Cressy 8 kills, PK 6 kills, 7 blocks. I thought it was really cool to see different players step up in those big moments. It wasn't just DeBeer, it wasn't just Looper. I will say though, I thought it was a bummer to watch Stanford not play their best in a third consecutive Elite Eight. That was something that they had been talking about literally all season long, was flipping the script there. And I do wonder, obviously I'm not in those conversations in the gym, but I do wonder in those big moments for the players that have been in those last 2 Elite Eight matches that they lost, is that in the back of their mind? Like, are they playing not to lose, or are they playing to win? Because to me, it looked like they were playing not to lose at the end.
Yeah, it felt like it. I just I felt like I wanted to reach to the TV and just help them somehow, and I couldn't do it.
Well, it's
But
tough too. Cami Minor didn't have a great game, and
not at
it's
all.
it's not it's not fun to see one of the best players in the game, one of the best setters that we've seen in a long time, like, not do great in those big moments. And I mean, that goes for really every team. There's obviously stars on across the board that it sucks to see them not have their best match. Nora Sis for Creighton, I thought Penn State defended her well, but she didn't have a great match either. It's tough to see seniors go out like that, because you want them to go out on a high note.
No, she grinded. The other match Saturday was Pitt, Kentucky. It was a sweep, but it was a tough sweep.
Almost not though.
Yeah, yeah, 25-22, 25-23, 25-17, but another set that
Yeah. Kentucky has to win that. You're up 21-15 and you can't close that out. I mean, that obviously also tells you, I think, what you need to know about Pitt and their ability to push late and not get down on themselves. But honestly, Kentucky they needed to win that set. And after that, I think you could tell it was going to be over. And honestly, I felt the same way in the Nebraska-Wisconsin match as well. During
well,
that third set. I mean, if you're up on a team like that, you have to find a way to capitalize.
I pulled up the Sunday morning Saturday results file for myself, to keep up. But high fives to Lynn, the Fighting Knights of Boca Raton, Florida, for winning the D2 national championship. Beats
Ayo.
San Francisco State. The D2 championship, I watched almost every match on the side TV. And
Nice.
one of those times I'll tell all of you, in the living room, 265 side by side. D2 one off to the side with the sound off. But that was nuts. 7th-seeded San Francisco State almost reverse swept them in the final. And but good for them. Anyhow, so then yesterday, Sunday,
Oh my gosh.
yes, and thank goodness even though Nebraska swept Wisconsin, it was still a gripping match, and it was good for
Great
ABC
match.
TV. It wasn't one of those. So often this season, you and I have said, "Oh God, another sweep," and it hurt the sport on TV. This was a
Yeah.
good match that I think anybody tuning in on ABC who is not a volleyball aficionado would have enjoyed.
Yeah, it was so fun. I think to me, the most fun matches to watch are crazy defensive matches, and that's exactly what we got. Like Nebraska was incredible. Wisconsin could barely put a ball down against them, but the Badgers, they were making so many good plays on their sides as well. I thought there were a few moments that Sarah Franklin had incredible saves. I thought Schumacher, I think she's really underrated as a bro, and she's going to have, a great 3 years to come. But I mean, Nebraska just looks good. I think when you have your defense going off like that and the
Oh, look,
efficiency is also
I
there.
think, yeah, I think that that's as good as they can play. That's not
I
to say they
agree.
can't do it again and can't do it again for two more matches. But I mean, in every aspect of the game, and where they looked a little ineffective offensively, I mean, give Wisconsin credit for that.
Yeah,
But
totally. I mean,
but
it's difficult when you're going up against a huge block like that. Like,
so listen to this about Emily. So, former libero at Northwestern. I like the by the way, the press release that they sent out about it from ESPN. Former Northwestern star libero, I think is what it said.
People keep saying that on TV, and I want to correct them and be like, that's like literally just not true. But
I
whenever we come on TV, they slate you, which means they give you a little bio. And like, you have Holly, it's like blah 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 Olympian, and there's Katie, it's like ACC Player of the Year, and I'm like, can we just put volleyball analyst for me? Like, I don't really need anything in there.
But anyway, so yesterday, as the Nebraska match was winding down, and Emily texts me and goes, "How come we can't have libero as Player of the Year?" And I said, "You're a voter for us. You can vote for her." And she was talking about Lexi Rodriguez, and I texted back and go, "Oh, I'd vote for Belinovich too, just to get a rise out of Emily." But yeah, you can vote for Lexi Rodriguez when the season, when we do our voting on Monday, if you
I
think
think I
that
will
she's
be
better.
voting for. I tweeted it yesterday. I think Rodriguez is the best player in the country. Obviously, I also believe that Babcock's going to win the award and very deservingly so. But I just think at her position, Babcock is incredible. And I don't know if we've seen a right side like her in a long time. But also, I think Lexi is one of, if not top three best liberos to ever come through the college game. And she absolutely is playing like it. To me, she's the best. She's the best player.
Well, and um, she gets a lot of support because it's an unrecordable stat I've talked about before. Nebraska slows more balls at the net than anybody else. So they're not blocked, so they're not recorded. And then she has two other DSs with her in Showboy and Mock who
Yeah.
make her job just maybe a little bit easier. That's not to say that she's not great, but she's certainly worthy of your vote for National Player of the Year next week. The good thing about us, see that the AVCA announces its National Player of the Year on Friday, which is after the semifinals, but it's decided before then because they all are in Louisville today, and they are just brainstorming. They're statistical, and they do more numbers than they do eyes and heart, which I think we do perhaps better. Our panel, though, waits until after the championship match, and there have been some examples. That my favorite one was in 2019. Catherine Plummer was injured and didn't get to play enough matches to be nominated for AVCA region. So subsequently, she couldn't be the National Player of the Year.
Yeah.
And she was our National Player of the Year because we don't care how many matches you played it if you're the best. Or like last year, Sarah Franklin was great and was the AVCA Player of the Year and deserved it. But we still had more matches to go. And what Maddie Skinner did made her our National Player of the Year.
See, I mean, I didn't agree with that because I think it's full body of work. I think that
Right.
just makes you tournament MVP, but it's super fair. Like, yeah, absolutely. Skinner was one of the best players in the country. But I agree. I think it, it it's it's also tough because there's so much recency bias. Again, like Skinner won because we do the awards after. I still voted for Franklin because I think it's full body of work, but I agree. I think especially these final four matches, should really have an impact.
It could. I mean, for that. And interestingly, too, we'll have Coach of the Year. Um, you know,
There's so many. I don't even know where to begin with that.
right, right. And my gut feeling today is I would vote for Kirsten at Creighton.
I'd vote for Katie.
And Katie has done a magnificent job too. And then
Yeah.
she's more of a sentimental choice this year, maybe too, because of everything that's happened. By the way, nice piece. You did good. And so
Yeah.
if you didn't get to see Emily's interview with Katie Schumacher-Cauley from Penn State, who is fighting breast cancer, it was a very nice interview and very well done and poignant on both of your sides, and really, really, really outstanding. But then during the shows, like the games, when they'll cut away and do like a little thing there, they just show the snippets of her talking, and they don't
Well,
say thanks to our Emily Ehman, the star
here's the thing
libero
that
from
people
Northwestern.
I know. Here's the thing that people don't know about TV. I did it was an hour-long sit down. We sat in that room for an hour and I interviewed her. The piece gets cut up into a 2-minute clip. And to be honest, a lot of that also was like some precursor, like 30 seconds of that was like basically an intro with like match sound. So you're really getting like a minute 30. Um, but I thought it was incredibly well done, but like that's, it's kind of just how TV works. I mean, there's enough information in there for a 30-minute special, but it's used for shorter things, which I totally get. But I mean, she was incredible. Like she opened up in a way I hadn't seen before, and I was just really privileged to be in that position to, you know, kind of get that out of her and to help her tell her story.
No, it was good because we talked about it, and you talked about it last week when Katie was visiting with us. But uh, it was good. But I wish that the whole thing would be put together, and maybe ESPN could put it on a video where we could see, so much more of it. But another story for another day. Um, Nebraska.
Yeah, there's one more point I wanted to make about that match.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
So I think we both agree Nebraska felt in control that entire time. And I I was, I think, most impressed with the defense of being able to handle the middles, which not a lot of people can do for Wisconsin. They held the middles to 067. Really, their Wisconsin's only efficient hitter was Smrek. And the only reason for that is because she was hitting literally over the block. There's nothing you can do about that. So I just going back to when I think defensively, like they felt in charge the whole way. And I remember during set 3, Wisconsin's up 15-11, and it felt like everything was going their way. But at every point in the match, anytime Nebraska made a little bit of a run, Wisconsin pretty much crumbled. And I turned to my dad when Wisconsin's up 15-11, and I said, I think 1-3-0 Nebraska run is going to completely change this. And lo and behold, they go on a little run and have all the momentum, and Wisconsin couldn't do it. And to be honest, I think a lot of that is because that was, I mean, I wasn't in the building, but that sounded like the loudest Devaney's probably ever been.
Everybody said it was really loud in Rec Hall last night for Penn State, but there was a snowstorm in Western
Yeah,
Pennsylvania.
yeah,
They had a lot of empty seats, so those people who were there did some screaming.
yeah. That
Um,
what a fun match. We went into this being like, why can't everyone just win?
yeah, right, right, exactly. How about Jess Merzek when it mattered? She just
Yep.
laid the hammer. She did really well. By the way, I started working on a note for tomorrow. I'm going to try to have a sentence about every team's transfer of the
Oh,
final 4 teams.
it's all of
There's
Penn State's
so
team.
many of them. I don't even what coaches. Why are you bother recruiting? Why are you signing kids out of high school? Why are you even wasting your time anymore? You know,
I play the
there's
game.
oh my gosh, you spend all your time just in the portal and with the NIL. And by the way, you said this when we first started. 4 number 1 seeds, we went chalk. The rich are only going to get richer. The chances of us ever seeing a 3 or a 4 or a 5 are diminishing next year.
Yeah.
And the club from which you can come out of the pack and go to the Final Four, win the national championship is going to get smaller and smaller and smaller. And so and the
Yeah.
haves and the have-nots are going to get even more separated. I've been on this long thing. We need a 1A and a 1AA like we used to have in football, something to that degree. And then where does that leave Western Kentucky and Creighton and Marquette? And I could go on, but I don't know the answer. But I know that it's not a level playing field now, and it's going to be incredibly less level later.
Yeah, I mean, we're already seeing it happen in the portal. Like, there's so many players leaving from like decently good programs. And I don't want to say this is like the complete reason why, but I had a ton of conversations with coaches over the last really week or so just about revenue sharing and what it's going to look like. And it's like you said, the rich are going to get richer.
The portal is just chock full right now, and there's a handful of big time impact players in the
Yeah.
portal. Don't want to go all into that. In
All right.
1977, early in the infancy stages of free agency in baseball, the New York Yankees, who were on the forefront of spending the most money and signing the most free agents, won the World Series, beat the Dodgers. And there was a book, and I have it over on the shelf, and it just says the best team money can buy.
Yeah.
And
There you
that's
go.
that's what we're going to have in volleyball among the top tier. What
I
made
don't know if I don't know if you heard this. This was very funny. I know Coach Cook didn't mean it like this, but
yes, that's her job, right?
no, he said it was like Taylor Landver's going off, and he was like, "Yeah, that's what she's paid to do." And then he like came back to make another comment, but the camera had already come down, and like that's obviously not like literally what he meant, but it was just funny in this day and age. It was like, but it kind of is true. Like that is she's
Well,
getting paid, but and I yeah, it was I started cackling at my TV because you could tell like it clicked in his head for a second. He was like, oh God. And then
oh no, Brenda and I were watching that. We both went. We looked at each other. Yeah, there you go. Said it.
that was so funny.
Um,
All right,
unbelievable.
Penn State Creighton. We didn't even talk about it too much.
Oh, Penn State did good. And they
I have one thing to say. I have one thing to say. I will have a lot of things to say, but okay. Here's what I thought. I thought in the big moments, as you mentioned, Penn State won and Creighton was trying not to lose. For example, in that fifth set, Creighton's tipping every ball. And that is not the same Creighton team that we've seen all season long. And I don't want to say it was like disappointing, but I was really bummed out to see in those big moments like tips and roll shots. And I wanted those players to go all out for it. And I thought they got tight and timid, and Penn State was going all out.
alligator arms is what we that's one phrase we use for that. It was tough. There were a couple of people who were just so much fun to watch. I hadn't paid enough attention to Jillian Grimes from Penn
She's
State.
so good.
She's really good. We are libero U in America. We have more liberos than can be possibly imagined. There are so many good ones. If you had not seen Creighton play and you didn't appreciate how great Kendra Wade is and the sets
Yeah.
that she made and how just amazing of a setter she is. She is just
Unbelievable.
yeah. But on the other side, for a young player, Izzy Stark is so impressive. And her numbers yesterday, she went something like where are we here? I'm getting there. I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
Six kills.
6 kills and 16 errorless tries.
16
41 assists.
attempts.
Yeah, 3 blocks and 11 digs.
16 attempts is more than both of her middles, just for context.
Yeah, yeah.
I love that. She was awesome. I think she took a page. I mean, she's played like this all year, but plays very similar to Kendra Wade. She's just a few inches taller and a lot more physical. But she's flashy. Like she makes the hard sets look easy. She's not afraid to take a dump. Sorry.
we've all said that about the setter going over in two. How about
I'm
that?
losing my mind.
Right. And no, we don't edit. Jaya Johnson,
Great.
for Creighton, has a chance to be one of the good stars in America. And there you go. So we got 2 matches. You have taken up residency more or less in the Commonwealth of Kentucky and going back.
I'm at home right now, which has been
in
nice.
the gym Wednesday, where we have 4 practices and of course 4 news conferences. And people have to say a couple of shout outs, by the way, to some of the SIDs from the host teams. Nancy Worley at Louisville. She is the veteran.
Incredible.
She is a pro's pro and, maybe the most seasoned veteran of all the SIDs, right? I mean, especially with retirements of some others. And Carissa Coleman at Pitt, young, but doing a great job. Way to get the information out there. And Nate Poland at Nebraska. So look, remember when they had those bobbleheads for Cook?
Did you get one?
I texted him. I said, "You've got to get me one." So he texted me the next day. He said, "I got you one. I'll just have it for you the next time I see you." Well, I'm going to see him, so I told him I hope he brings it. And I'm looking forward to doing some interviews with his people. And then thank you, Creighton SID Rob Anderson, for providing the information we needed last night at Penn State, getting us links to everything, including the post-match video conferences from both Creighton and Penn State. Rob Anderson, you are the MVP of that region.
Rob's one of the best SIDs in the game.
Yes, and we rely heavily on all of them for what we do. You more than me. So
I think that's what people don't realize. Like, we're not just calling matches. Like, for example, on Wednesday, I spent 9 hours in the arena talking to SIDs, talking to the coaches, talking to players. Like, there's so much relationship that goes into it. And, when you have good relationships with the players and especially and coaches and SIDs, like it helps my job because I get better information.
Absolutely. And I mean, I describe for people, sometimes I don't cover something. I just go to see and be seen, grip and grin, schmooze. And a lot of times with volleyball people, as you know, we don't even talk about volleyball. We'll talk about families. We'll talk about vacations. We'll talk about travel. We'll talk about all sorts of things. And of course, we do talk some volleyball. which I'm looking forward to doing this week. It's a marathon. We're not
Two
we're
big matchups, and these are so fun. Like the fact that, I mean, I know people are like not happy about like Big Ten, and ACC, but like these are really good matchups that we're about to get.
we said I mean, if nothing else, you and I have agreed upon it was 1 and 1A for Nebraska Pittsburgh, whether
Yeah.
you were voting Pittsburgh won or Nebraska won, and they're both just fabulously good teams. Penn State has beaten Nebraska. Of course, it was at Rec Hall, but beat them good.
Yep.
So that's not a gimme. And Louisville, Pittsburgh, I mean, just go back starting to last year when Pitt reverse swept Louisville in the regular season, reverse swept them to go to the Final Four. And then their matches this year were just slugfests. And so,
Yeah.
there
Well,
you
I mean, Pitt or Louisville they've knocked each other out of the last 2 years. Like Pitt won last year, as you mentioned, and then Louisville knocked Pitt out of the Final Four in 2022. So, I mean, you just go back in the history between those two teams, and I know Pitt, like you mentioned, won both this season, but one of those was in 5 sets. It was a very close match. I thought that was one of the most fun matches of the regular season. So to have like that big ACC matchup of two rivals, and honestly, this is the best Louisville's looked. I think I didn't even mention that match against Purdue. I mean, Purdue played pretty horribly, but Louisville looked incredible. Like they could have easily played down to Purdue's level, kept the gas on. They looked great against Stanford. I mean, this could be a different matchup with Louisville's defense looking like it has over the last two matches.
well, I go back to what I said earlier. You got 4 teams with fabulous coaching staffs,
Yeah.
a lot of talent, uh,
And
really
two
motivated.
females.
And yeah, and they all play defense. They take defense like it's the end of the world.
Yep.
And we used to say to the kids in club back in the day, you should play this game like a crazed dog, foaming at the mouth every play, get after it. And
Yeah.
that's pretty much what these guys do, minus the foaming of the mouth.
Yeah.
Fortunately,
All right. Predictions.
no, I'm better. I know better, and that goes back to my days. No, I
What?
was a college basketball writer forever, and I covered basketball like you could not believe. Knew more about it, I felt, than most people in anywhere. And then my brackets every year were just so horrible that it depressed me and it ruined the tournament for me. So I
I'm
don't.
winning my bracket challenges right now. So
Are you? You in the ESPN bracket?
yeah, well, I ended up making a group, like it was like the Emily Ehman's group or whatever, and it ended up being like the second most like group like entries in it, and there's like 4,000 people, and I'm obviously not leading that one, but like I'm pretty high up in that one. So I feel good
I
about that. And I'm winning my family one, which honestly to me is the most important because I got to prove to them I actually know something.
well, show you. I would not have had Louisville, Penn State, or Nebraska in the Final Four teams
Okay.
bracket in mind. So that's why I'm not. I thought all 3 of them were going down, and I thought Pittsburgh was going to make it. So it's a good
Yeah.
thing. I don't fill out brackets, and I don't bet on sports.
Honestly, I think what's really fun about this Final Four too is that okay, Pitt's been to the last three consecutive. Nebraska's been to two of the last three. Louisville, I believe, is two of the last three as well. Penn State has not been to one since 2017. So none of those players have been to a Final Four. So to me, when I'm factoring that in, these players are used to the pageantry. Like there's so much that happens around a Final Four that people don't understand. You know, they go through hours of a car wash media craziness on Wednesday before they play Thursday. I think it's really beneficial for the teams that are used to that, that have handled that. They know what to expect. Then a Penn State team who's coming in that's very excited, but they're like, oh my God, this is so much happening at once. And I think that might factor into this Nebraska Penn State game. Nebraska's been playing on big platforms all year. Penn State, not as much so.
Nebraska fans had bought as many tickets as possible, and we're
Yeah.
going to be wearing Go Big Red, no matter whether the Huskers made it or not. Louisville is the home team, and they're red, so it's going to be like a sea of red. And I would assume in the first match, most everybody will be rooting for Louisville, including the Nebraska fans, because they would rather play Louisville.
Well,
And,
and Danny.
and then everybody will be rooting for Penn State against Nebraska, except for WAN. What about Nebraska? Don't get me in trouble again.
I know what you were
She's,
saying.
she's Emily Ehman. She will be on the floor as part of
Yeah.
the so-called studio show, but not in studio, but on a nice podium. And it'll be way
Best.
fun. I will see you Wednesday. We are not going to do this next Monday because we'll both be traveling and we've got to get our All-American teams together, but we'll have a follow-up to the season some
Well,
point.
No, 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 no. You hold it right there. What we're gonna do is on Friday or Saturday, we're gonna do a championship preview.
Okay. Yeah, well, the boss has spoken. There you
We
go.
have, and we
I
have to
just
do an end of season one.
I just take up one tile in the 900 square feet. The 899 go to Emily Ehman. Thanks for watching. Em, I'll see you in a couple of days.
Oh, wait, 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 wait. Before we end,
Okay.
funny story that we didn't get to. Just so everyone knows, Lee is like the most punctual person ever. 15 minutes before we start recording this every single day, I'll get a Zoom link and he's just waiting there. And he'll text me in the morning. And I'm currently in Bloomington, where I'm from, which is on Eastern time. I'm normally in Central time in Chicago. So I text him yesterday. I say, hey, let's do 11 Eastern. Great. 11 Eastern rolls by. I haven't heard from Lee. I don't have a Zoom link. 11:15 rolls by. I call him twice. I'm like, I'm now freaking out. 11:30 rolls by. I messaged Stacy. I didn't tell you this. And I said, have you heard from Lee? I'm worried. And so I've fully convinced myself that you died somehow. And so I'm freaking out. I'm texting my mom. I'm texting my dad. Like, what am I supposed to do? And then Lee texts me, oh, I just finished swimming. Sorry. I thought you meant Central time, not Eastern time. Meanwhile, I'm in a spiral thinking that my friend and work colleague just died.
Dead at, dead at the computer or drowned in the pool, both. Thank
Yes.
goodness I got up. I got up so early to finish um, the game stories because once again, Volleyball Magazine, an actual print edition, is the cover for the AVCA convention program. 4 game stories, and I've got an essay in there, and it's kind of cool and it's really neat. We use the old timey Volleyball Magazine logo. So I was up at 5 to finish that, and then I was up and going, and I said, "Well, I better hurry up and swim before I got nothing left." And sorry for the confusion, but yes, as I said to Emily in the follow-up text, I may feel dead, but I'm very much alive.
My God.
Bye, Em.
Bye.